The galaxy was quiet that night, too quiet. In the deep black between stars, a small transport ship drifted. Its engines barely alive, its crew frightened and weak. Captain Lyra of the Valari Alliance gripped the edge of her console, eyes fixed on the flashing red beacon on her screen. Their power was almost gone, their food almost finished. And worse, the raiders would be back soon. She turned to her communications officer. "Send the SOS again," she ordered. Her voice trembling, the officer nodded, tapping at glowing keys. "Signal sent, Captain," he whispered, but no one's answering. Lyra stared at the stars, 1,000 bright eyes looking back at her. Her mind raced. "Someone must hear it," she said. The Federation, the core fleets, anyone. But deep inside she knew. The galaxy had already abandoned this sector. The outer rim was a graveyard, a forgotten frontier where only ghosts and monsters remained. The raiders had come without warning. Ships painted in blood and fire, pirates from the void, armed with stolen tech and no mercy. They took planets, enslaved colonies, and destroyed what they couldn't carry. The Valari Alliance had tried to resist, but their fleets were old, their weapons weak, and their courage fading. Now this ship, the Silver Hope, was the last survivor of the convoy, drifting near an uncharted system no one dared to visit. The distress beacon pulsed again, sending desperate waves of digital cries into the darkness unknown to them. Far away, beyond the spiral arm of the galaxy, a listening array caught the faint whisper. An ancient machine silent for centuries blinked to life. The signal bounced across networks thought dead, traveling through gates that hadn't opened since the Great Silence. And then, somewhere in the Orion arm, it reached them. A blue world turned its gaze to the stars. On the dark side of Earth's moon, a massive structure pulsed with hidden energy. Inside the command center of the Terran Defense Network, alarms began to scream. "Unidentified SOS detected," said a calm AI voice. "Origin, Valari Sector, priority code, Omega Distress." Admiral Rowan stood from his chair, his old eyes narrowing. "Valari?" he muttered. "That's alien territory, isn't it?" The AI responded, "Correct, Admiral, non-human signal requesting help from any capable force." The Admiral frowned. "Any capable force?" he repeated. He turned toward the observation window, where Earth hung silent and proud. "After 200 years of isolation," he said slowly, "they finally remembered us." Across the command floor, officers exchanged uneasy glances. Humanity had not answered an alien distress call in centuries, not since the Galactic Council had exiled them for being too violent, too dangerous, too human. The galaxy had called them Deathworlders, a name born from fear and legend. But now their name echoed again through the void. "Should we respond, sir?" asked the young officer beside him. Rowan took a deep breath, his voice cold and steady. "Prepare Fleet Sigma," he said, "if they called for help. They'll get it." "But sir," the officer hesitated. "The Council might see it as a threat." Rowan's lips curved into a grim smile. "Then let them be afraid again." Deep under the lunar surface, massive hangars opened, metal titans, human warships awakened from their sleep. Engines roared to life like dragons breathing fire. Each hull bore scars of old wars. But every ship still carried the same silent promise. Never again would humanity ignore a cry for help. Meanwhile, aboard the Silver Hope, Lyra stared at the dark monitors. Her last engineer had collapsed from exhaustion. The ship's reactor down to its final breath. "Captain," the officer whispered weakly. "We're not going to make it." Lyra closed her eyes, her heart heavy with failure. "We did everything we could," she said softly. "If no one comes, then at least we tried." But then a new sound filled the bridge. A deep pulse, rhythmic and powerful, echoing through the void. Her sensors flickered to life, showing impossible readings. "Captain!" the officer shouted. "Something's coming out of hyperspace." Lyra froze. "Raiders?" No, it's something else." The stars around them warped, the void itself trembling, and then it appeared. A ship so massive it blocked half the starlight, its surface black as night and glowing faintly blue at the edges. The comm system sparked, and a voice spoke through the static, deep and commanding. "This is Admiral Rowan of the Terran Defense Fleet," it said. "We received your call." Lyra's hands trembled. She couldn't speak, her officer whispered, "Captain, it's them." She looked at the towering vessel and felt both fear and relief. "The Deathworlders," she breathed. "They came. Outside, the Terran flagship Erebus deployed a dozen smaller warships, each armed like a moving fortress. Their weapons charged, their shields glowed, and their formation cut through the void like blades of light. Humanity had returned to the stars not as conquerors, but as the storm that answered a desperate cry, and for the first time in 1,000 years, the galaxy would remember. When Deathworlders answer a call, they don't come to talk, they come to end the nightmare. The stars rippled like waves as the Terran fleet took formation. Every alien sensor in the nearby sectors lit up with warnings. Unable to believe what they were seeing, the Deathworlders had returned. The Erebus, humanity's flagship, led the armada. Its hull a shadowed mountain of titanium and light, engines burning like suns behind it. Captain Lyra and her small crew stared at the impossible sight from their shattered bridge, their eyes wide, hearts racing. For generations they had heard only stories about humans, the forbidden species, the monsters that once brought entire empires to their knees. And now those stories stood before them, alive, real, and terrifying. "Captain," whispered the communications officer. "They're hailing us." Lyra swallowed hard and nodded. "Put them through," the screen flickered, revealing a man with sharp eyes and silver streaks in his hair. He wore a black uniform with a single insignia, a red world surrounded by stars. "This is Admiral Rowan," the man said calmly. "Identify yourself." Lyra forced her trembling hands to steady. "I am Captain Lyra of the Valari Alliance ship Silver Hope. We sent the SOS. Rowan's expression softened only slightly. "We received it," he said. "Stand by, we're locking onto your ship. Medical and engineering drones will assist immediately." Outside, metallic pods detached from the Erebus, flying through the darkness toward Lyra's broken vessel. They attached themselves to the hull with magnetic claws. Drilling into the structure like metallic insects, within minutes power flowed again. Lights flickered on and life returned to Silver Hope. Lyra's crew gasped as air recyclers hummed and consoles revived. "Captain," the engineer shouted, "they just restored half our systems, they're fixing us." But Lyra couldn't relax. Every instinct told her that power like this came with a price. She turned back to the comms. "Admiral, why would you help us?" she asked quietly. Rowan looked at her through the holographic feed, his eyes like cold steel. "Because no one else would," he said. "And because we don't leave people to die, far away." The raiders who had attacked Silver Hope were returning. Their scanners picked up the sudden energy surge from the human ships at first. They laughed, another helpless convoy to loot. But then they saw the readings. One of the raider captains froze. That's impossible," he muttered. "No ship that size should exist here," said another. "It's reading off the charts." By the time they realized what it was already too late. The Erebus turned, and the space around it shimmered, its targeting arrays locked on the approaching enemy fleet. Admiral Rowan raised his hand, his voice calm. "Fire!" The night exploded. Lances of blue plasma streaked through the void, slicing through raider ships like paper. Shockwaves rippled across space as hulls melted and reactors imploded. In seconds, a fleet of 50 ships was reduced to drifting ash. Lyra watched in stunned silence. Her crew speechless, she whispered, "They destroyed them." In one volley, Rowan gave the order to cease fire. "Target neutralized," reported his second officer. "No survivors detected," the admiral nodded, then turned to the holoscreen where Lyra appeared pale and trembling. "You're safe now," he said simply. Lyra wanted to thank him, but words failed her. She had seen wars, seen destruction, but nothing like this. The humans didn't just fight, they ended fights. Later she walked to the observation deck, watching the Terran ships moving like silent giants among the stars. Her officer joined her quietly. "Captain," he said, "do you think they'll leave after this?" Lyra shook her head slowly. "No," she said. "Something tells me they came for more than a rescue." Inside the Erebus, Admiral Rowan stood before a holographic map of the region, the AI reported. Multiple distress signals detected across Valari sectors. Pirate and slaver activity widespread, Rowan frowned. "They've let this region rot," he muttered. He turned to his officers. "Deploy relief fleets to nearby systems. We'll stabilize the corridor." One officer hesitated. "Sir, that's alien territory. Are we authorized?" Rowan's voice was cold, unshaken. "Authorization is survival," he said. "If the galaxy won't protect its people, humanity will. back aboard Silver Hope. Lyra received a direct transmission marked Priority 1. It was from Earth Command. The message was short, almost haunting in its calm. Valari Alliance, your signal was heard. Humanity is returning to the stars. Prepare for contact. Her hands trembled as she replayed it. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy would see human fleets move beyond their borders. And for the first time in her life, Lyra wasn't sure if that was salvation or the beginning of something unstoppable. Outside, hundreds of Terran ships aligned, forming the shape of a spear pointed toward the unknown. Their engines ignited as one, painting the void in blue light. The Deathworlders were on the move. Every world in their path would soon learn a single truth written in the silence of the stars. When humanity answers a call, the galaxy changes forever. The news spread faster than light. Across the networks of the galaxy, whispers turned into panic and panic into silence. The Deathworlders were back. In the grand halls of the Galactic Council, the delegates of 100 species argued and shouted, their voices overlapping like a storm. Screens showed footage of burning raider fleets, their ships torn apart by weapons too powerful to comprehend. They used orbital lances, screamed one ambassador. No one has had that tech for centuries, another trembled. It's humanity, I knew it, they've broken isolation. At the center of the chamber, the high speaker of the council banged his staff, the echo cutting through the chaos. Order, he roared. We will not let fear control us. But even as he said it, his own hands shook. The hologram behind him displayed the Terran fleet near Valari space, an armada of fire and metal. They responded to an SOS, said the Valari delegate softly. They saved our people. The chamber fell into stunned silence. You're saying, hissed the reptilian envoy from the Threx Dominion, that the monsters of Earth came to help? Lyra's recorded message played on the screen, her tired but honest voice describing how humanity restored her ship, healed her crew, and destroyed the raiders. They acted with precision and mercy, she said. They even shared medicine. The council members looked at one another. Uneasy, no one wanted to believe it, because mercy was the one thing Deathworlders were never supposed to have. Meanwhile, on the Erebus, Admiral Rowan stood in silence as the stars rolled past. Earth Command had sent new orders, coded and clear, secure the outer rim, protect civilian vessels but make no alliance, observe and evaluate. Rowan understood what that meant. Help them, yes, but never trust them. Humanity had learned its lesson long ago, when kindness was repaid with betrayal. He looked out at the distant nebula where alien empires thrived and whispered, let's see what kind of galaxy we've come back to, far away. On the planet Threx Prime, a dark meeting took place beneath the surface. Warlords and shadow leaders gathered, their faces hidden by smoke and light. They will come for us next, said one, his voice thick with fear. They always do, another growled. We can strike first, before their fleets grow stronger. But how? They're humans, the warlord sneered. They may be strong, but they bleed. Across the stars, weapons began to move, secret plans awakened, and the scent of war returned to the galaxy. But not all feared the Deathworlders in the refugee sectors. Alien colonies that had been abandoned for decades now lit their beacons again. They sent messages of hope calling for the humans, calling for the fleet that answered cries in the dark. For them, the Deathworlders were no longer monsters. They were legends reborn, back on the Silver Hope. Captain Lyra walked the restored halls of her ship. Human engineers had finished their work. Leaving behind clean systems and quiet efficiency, she looked at a small crate labeled Property of the Terran Fleet. Inside were nutrient packs, tools, and a single note that read, Stay alive. We'll be watching. She smiled faintly, touched the note, and whispered, Thank you. But deep down she felt a growing unease. Every instinct told her this was just the beginning. In the Terran command room, Admiral Rowan watched new transmissions flood in. Pirate activity was dropping fast. Entire slaver rings collapsing as rumors spread that humanity was patrolling the outer sectors. He turned to his aide. Fear is a weapon too, he said quietly. Sometimes more powerful than guns. The aide nodded. Sir? The council just sent a request for diplomatic contact. Rowan raised an eyebrow. After centuries of exile, they finally want to talk? Yes, sir. Rowan smirked. Good, let them wait. Later that cycle, as the Erebus passed through the shadow of a dying star, a small scout ship approached. It carried a single Valari emissary, Captain Lyra. She had come with news urgent and grim. "Admiral," she said when she entered the command deck. "You need to hear this." She activated a recording. The image of a Threx warlord appeared, screaming to his generals, "The Deathworlders cannot be allowed to rise again. Destroy them before they rebuild the old fire." Rowan's eyes darkened. "So it begins," he said. Lyra nodded. "They're preparing for war." Rowan turned to his officers. His voice calm but firm. "Alert all fleets," he ordered. "The galaxy wants to test humanity's resolve again." He looked at Lyra, standing tall and unafraid. "Then they'll see what we've become," he said. And as the Erebus engines ignited, the stars themselves seemed to recoil, because when Deathworlders moved, even the void listened. The old legends had returned, and the galaxy would soon learn a truth older than any empire. Mercy had brought the humans back, but vengeance would keep them here. The galaxy trembled. It began with a whisper, a quiet rumor that the humans were planning to rebuild their empire. Within weeks, the whisper turned into fear, and fear into the sound of engines. Across the Threx dominion, fleets armed with ion cannons and dark matter torpedoes gathered at the border of human-controlled space. Every species that once hated and feared the Deathworlders saw a chance to strike first, to erase the old nightmare before it could rise again. Admiral Rowan stood at the command deck of the Erebus, watching the approaching storm of ships on the tactical display, thousands of hostile vessels forming a wall of light across the void. His officers moved with quiet efficiency. No one spoke of fear. No one doubted what would happen next. Rowan's eyes narrowed. "They think they can cage the storm," he said softly. "Let's show them what a Deathworlder storm looks like." From the bridge of her smaller cruiser, Captain Lyra watched in disbelief. She had tried to warn the Council that the humans only wanted peace, but they didn't listen. Now fleets from half the galaxy were converging. "This is madness," she whispered. "They don't know what they've started." The Erebus released a signal pulse, a coded frequency that echoed through the darkness. Every Terran ship in the fleet received the order. Defensive mode. Engage Protocol Aegis. Massive shields bloomed around each human vessel. Glowing like halos of blue flame, the alien commanders laughed, believing it was a desperate attempt to hide behind walls. They launched everything they had. The first wave struck. Thousands of plasma bolts slammed into human shields, lighting up the void like a new sunrise. But when the light faded, the Terran fleet still stood untouched, unbroken. Then came the second wave, missiles, disruptors, kinetic rounds, each one stronger than the last. The sensors of the alien ship screamed warnings as energy levels around the Erebus spiked far beyond safe limits. Rowan turned to his weapons officer. "Open the gate," he said. At first, nothing happened. Then space itself cracked open, a rift glowing like the heart of a dying star. From that rift emerged ships older than history, war relics from Earth's ancient wars. The Titan-class dreadnoughts. They had slept under lunar dust for centuries, now they roared awake, each one bristling with enough firepower to erase continents. The alien admirals hesitated for the first time. Fear crept into their commands. Those are myth," one stammered. "Those ships can't exist anymore." But myths were real now, and they were angry. The Erebus moved first. Its rail cannons fired. Each shot a spear of molten metal that crossed millions of kilometers in seconds. Enemy cruisers shattered like glass. The human dreadnoughts followed, cutting through fleets with surgical precision, their weapons guided by AIs that thought faster than entire councils. What was meant to be a swift extermination turned into a massacre. Alien ships exploded one after another, their formations collapsing under the relentless storm. Lyra watched the destruction unfold, her heart heavy. "This wasn't a war," she whispered. "It's a lesson." Inside the Terran Command Center, Rowan's officers reported numbers. Enemy fleets down to 30% strength. Alliance reinforcements retreating. Rowan's voice was calm, but his eyes burned cold. "Hold fire on fleeing ships," he ordered. "No more blood than necessary." The officer looked at him in surprise. "Sir, after what they tried—" "I said hold," Rowan repeated. "If we become what they fear, then they were right to fear us." The surviving alien ships limped away, leaving behind debris, silence, and the glowing shadows of defeat. The galaxy had expected chaos from the Deathworlders. Instead, they saw control, mercy, and terrifying power on the ruined Council world. Messages poured in from shattered fleets. They didn't chase us, said one admiral in disbelief. They could have destroyed everything, but they let us go. The high speaker slumped in his chair, his voice shaking. What kind of monsters show mercy after winning? The chamber was silent. No one had an answer. Back aboard Erebus, Lyra approached Rowan quietly. You could have destroyed them, she said. Why didn't you? Rowan looked at her, weary but resolute. Because we didn't come to rule, he said. We came to remind them why peace exists. Lyra nodded slowly, understanding now that humanity's strength wasn't just in their weapons. It was in their choice. As the Terran fleet drifted among the wreckage, their lights reflecting off shattered hulls, a single transmission echoed through the stars from Earth itself. The voice of the global command AI spoke clearly. Message to all civilizations. Humanity has returned to the galaxy not for conquest but for balance. Do not mistake mercy for weakness. And for the first time in thousands of years, the galaxy listened, because everyone now knew that the Deathworlders could have burned them all, but chose not to. Still deep within the Threx dominion, hidden in the ashes of defeat, dark minds plotted revenge. They whispered of forbidden weapons, ancient horrors buried beyond the edge of known space. And they swore one thing. If humanity was the storm, they would summon the darkness behind it. The war was over, but the silence it left behind felt wrong. In the cold reaches beyond charted space, something ancient stirred, something that had watched every battle unfold without moving. Even before the humans returned, it had been waiting, sleeping, listening to the cries of dying worlds. Now, the noise of destruction had woken it. Admiral Rowan stood in his quarters aboard the Erebus, staring at the holographic map of the galaxy. The red zones marking the warfronts had faded, yet a new pulse blinked on the edge of the display. A faint signal, not alien, not human, just wrong. His AI assistant, Vera, spoke softly. Unknown anomaly detected. Origin beyond the Perseus arm. Rowan frowned. Civilization? Vera paused. No records, no known signatures, but... Admiral, the pattern is familiar. It matches pre-extinction data. Rowan froze. That's impossible. Far across the stars, within the Threx Dominion's darkest research world, scientists huddled in panic. They had activated something they didn't understand. They had found a relic, a sphere older than the galaxy's oldest ruins. When they tried to study it, it awoke, and now their instruments screamed with impossible readings. We thought it was a weapon, said one researcher, but it's not. It's alive. The warlords who survived the defeat had gathered there, desperate to regain power. They believed the relic could destroy the Deathworlders. Instead, it began to destroy them. Within hours, the planet's surface cracked open. Black lightning tore through the sky, and a massive shadow emerged from the rift. It was not a ship, not a creature, but something in between. Its surface shimmered like liquid metal, and its voice echoed in every frequency known to life. You called for power. I heard you. Now you will pay its price. Every Threx signal vanished in seconds. Only a faint echo remained, an energy wave traveling straight toward human-controlled space. On the Erebus, alarms blared across all decks. Massive gravitational anomaly approaching, shouted the sensor officer. Rowan turned to the holographic display, watching as the energy surge expanded across the void. Vera's voice trembled, something no AI should do. Admiral, whatever this is, it's older than humanity. Older than the Council, older than the stars themselves. Rowan clenched his fists. Get me Earth Command now. Back on Earth? Deep beneath the Terran Defense Headquarters, scientists and generals gathered. They analyzed the incoming signal and paled. It's rewriting physics, one whispered. It's erasing data as it travels. The Supreme Commander of Earth, a woman known only as Director Saul, appeared on Rowan's comms. Admiral, she said, you are authorized to engage Operation Prometheus. Rowan's eyes hardened. Understood? Activating ancient systems. From the dark side of Earth's moon to the hidden fortresses around Mars, humanity's oldest secrets came alive. Massive platforms rose from the dust, orbital rings that hadn't been used since the War of Ascension. Each one pulsed with the same symbol carved into human history, the mark of the Deathworlders. And from the deep vaults beneath Antarctica, an enormous ship began to rise, not gray like the Erebus, but pure white. Covered in old Terran language and solar armor, the humans called it Saul's Hand. The first and last failsafe of Earth, Captain Lyra, now commanding her own restored cruiser, was summoned to join the Terran fleet again. She arrived near the anomaly border, her sensors blinding from the intensity. "What is that?" she asked through the comms. Rowan's face appeared grim as stone. "Something the Threx unleashed, something we once buried." "Buried?" she echoed. Rowan nodded. "Humanity didn't just fight the galaxy centuries ago, Lyra. We fought it. And we lost." The void in front of them rippled as the shadow form approached, its presence warping the light of nearby stars. It spoke without sound, its voice echoing in every mind on every ship. "Children of Deathworld," it whispered. "You were never meant to return." Lyra fell to her knees, clutching her head as her mind filled with visions. Worlds consumed, suns devoured, memories of endless night. Rowan gritted his teeth, fighting the psychic pressure. "Target locked," his officer shouted. "Energy readings spiking across all ships." "Fire everything we have," Rowan commanded. The Terran fleet unleashed hell, beams of plasma, railguns, graviton torpedoes, all fired at once, creating a light brighter than a supernova. The shadow screamed, its form shattering and reforming in the chaos. Then suddenly the weapons went silent. The sensors showed nothing. Had it worked? Lyra stared out into the void, heart racing. "Admiral, I think we—" Her words cut off as a massive wave of darkness surged back toward them. The shadow had survived, and now it was angry. Rowan's voice echoed through the fleet. "All ships, prepare for fallback," he ordered. "Protect the civilian sectors, this is not over." As the human fleet began to retreat toward the inner systems, the stars behind them flickered out one by one. Something far beyond war had awakened. And even the Deathworlders, for the first time in centuries, knew fear. The shadow crossed half the galaxy in silence. Worlds went dark as it passed. Communication arrays died without warning, and entire fleets vanished without leaving wreckage behind. No explosion, no fire, just the soundless swallowing of light. Everywhere it went, the stars dimmed on Earth. The skies above the northern hemisphere turned crimson as satellites fell from orbit. The people didn't know what was coming, only that something vast and terrible was approaching. In orbit, the Terran fleets gathered, engines burning like blue suns, shields shimmering across the dark. Humanity stood ready. This time they would not run. Inside the command bridge of Sol's hand, Director Sol watched the growing darkness on the main screen. It wasn't just an anomaly anymore, it was alive. "Distance to contact?" she asked. 4 astronomical units in closing," the officer replied. "It's absorbing everything in its path." Sol nodded once. Calm, determined. "Activate the core protocol." Rows of officers hesitated. "Ma'am," one said softly, "if we do that, there won't be anything left." Sol's gaze never wavered. "If it reaches Earth, there won't be anything left anyway." Deep beneath the planet's crust, reactors older than recorded history roared awake. Energy veins lit up across continents, pulsing like the heartbeat of the world. The Terran defense grid came alive. The old planetary armor once built during the War of Ascension. A shimmering dome of plasma rose from the oceans to the stratosphere, wrapping the planet in a glowing cocoon of light. From orbit, Earth looked like a sun reborn. Admiral Rowan stood on the Erebus, staring at the cosmic darkness spreading like ink across the void. Beside him, Captain Lyra's cruiser floated silently. "Admiral," she said through the comms, "that thing isn't just moving, it's hunting." Rowan nodded grimly. "It feeds on energy. And we just lit up the brightest beacon in the galaxy." The shadow began to change shape as it neared. It was no longer formless. It now had eyes. 1,000 of them, glowing red like dying stars. And within those lights, images flickered. Faces, planets, battles, reflections of everything it had consumed. Then a voice whispered across all frequencies, "You took what was mine, little Deathworlders. Your fire should have died long ago." Rowan clenched his jaw. "So it speaks," Lyra's voice trembled. "What does it want?" Vera, the ship AI, replied, "It wants everything. It was once a god here. Long before life learned to crawl." The shadow hit the defense grid like a tidal wave. The impact shook the moon, tearing apart abandoned stations and scattering debris across space. For a moment the shields held, glowing brighter than ever before. Then cracks appeared, the oceans boiled. The atmosphere screamed. Rowan shouted, "All ships! Form the halo line. Protect the grid at all costs." Thousands of human warships moved as one, creating a barrier above the planet, their weapons firing non-stop. Bolts of plasma and magnetized tungsten tore through the dark mass. but the creature absorbed every shot. Its surface shimmered with human weapon fire like a mirror drinking sunlight. Lyra's ship was hit, alarms blared. "Shields at 30%, her officer yelled. "Hull breach in Section 12. Lyra gripped the console. "Reroute life support." "We hold this line." Director Sol watched from the command tower inside Sol's hand. She turned to her aide. "Is the core ready?" "Yes, ma'am." "Then begin the countdown." Below Earth's surface, something vast awakened. A circular structure kilometers wide began to spin, powered by energy drawn from the planet's magnetic core. This was the secret humanity never told the galaxy, the Prometheus reactor. It was the weapon built not to destroy life, but to reset it. The countdown began, 10 minutes until activation. 9 minutes outside, the Erebus and the fleet fought like gods of fire. But the shadow was relentless, consuming everything it touched. It reached the edge of the Terran grid, tendrils of darkness scraping against the atmosphere. Lightning arced from the clouds as if the planet itself resisted. Onboard Erebus. Rowan's voice broke through the chaos. "Lyra, pull your ship back behind us," she shook her head. "Not a chance, Admiral. I'm not letting that thing reach the surface." Her cruiser surged forward, engines blazing, colliding with one of the shadow's tendrils. Energy erupted in a burst of white light, blinding sensors when it cleared. Half her ship was gone, but the tendril was severed. Rowan shouted, "Lyra!" Only static replied. Sol clenched her fist, her voice steady despite the shaking floor. "Activate Prometheus now." The countdown hit 0. The world went white. Every sensor, every mind, every signal vanished under a flood of light. A column of pure solar fire erupted from Earth's core. Piercing the heavens, the shadow screamed, not in sound, but in gravity, tearing space itself apart. For the first time, it recoiled, shrinking back, dissolving into fragments of energy. When the light faded, silence returned. The fleet was in ruins, half the orbital stations gone. But Earth still turned below, alive. Rowan opened his eyes, the screens flickering weakly. "Status," he rasped. Vera replied quietly. "The anomaly is retreating." He leaned back, exhausted. Then humanity held the line, but in the void beyond the dying light, something still lingered. A fragment of the shadow drifted silently, small but pulsing with dark energy. It whispered a promise only the stars could hear. "You delayed me, not destroyed me, Deathworlders. I will return when your sun begins to fade." The storm had passed, but the stars looked different now, quieter, older, as if they too had witnessed the rage of gods. Where the shadow once moved, only faint ripples remained, like scars on the skin of the universe. And amid the silence, Earth still glowed. Wrapped in a fading halo of golden light, Admiral Rowan stood on the observation deck of the Erebus. His uniform torn, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. Outside, the ruins of the fleet drifted like a graveyard of heroes, ships broken yet still shining with human defiance. For a long time, no one spoke. Then the comms came alive, a soft voice whispering through the static. "This is Captain Lyra of the Valari Dawn." "I repeat, I'm still here." Rowan's heart leapt. He turned sharply. "Trace that signal." The crew worked fast, and within seconds her ship appeared on the long-range scanners, half destroyed, floating above the upper atmosphere. "Get her out of there," Rowan ordered, his voice firm again. "I want every medical unit on standby." Minutes later, Lyra was brought aboard. She looked pale, her arm in a sling. Her uniform scorched, but her eyes were alive. Rowan met her in the hangar, where the survivors stood in silent respect. She smiled weakly. "Told you I'd hold the line." He nodded, his voice quiet. "You did more than that. You reminded the galaxy what courage looks like." Outside the window, the first sunlight touched Earth's surface again. The plasma shield dimmed and faded, and oceans began to calm. Humanity had survived the impossible, and somewhere deep within that victory, the galaxy began to change across alien worlds. The news spread like wildfire. The Deathworlders saved the galaxy in the council chambers. The same species who once feared humanity now sent messages of gratitude, apology, and awe. Even the Threx remnants sent word of surrender, their symbols of war replaced with banners of peace. But humanity did not answer right away. Earth had learned not to trust words spoken only after fear. Director Sol stood in the core tower of Sol's hand, her face illuminated by a dozen holograms showing new star maps. "Admiral," she said through the secure channel, "the Council wishes to negotiate a new alliance. Rowan stared at the glowing display of the galaxy before him. He saw the borders, the scars, the ruins, and the empty silence left by those who didn't survive. "Tell them," he said softly. "That humanity will talk when we are ready," Sewell nodded. "And until then?" Rowan looked out the viewport at the drifting debris of alien and human ships alike. "Until then we rebuild, we remember, and we watch the stars." Weeks passed, and the Terran fleets began the long process of restoration. Shipyards above Mars filled with activity. New designs were already emerging, sleeker, faster, forged from lessons written in blood and fire. The AI Vera expanded across multiple ships, forming a shared network of consciousness that would monitor the edges of known space. And within every ship's log, one phrase appeared again and again. "We held the line." Captain Lyra recovered quickly. She often visited the memorial decks where holographic names of fallen soldiers shimmered in soft blue light. Among those names were entire crews who gave their lives defending a world that wasn't even theirs. When she looked at those names, she felt something deeper than grief, something like pride. Because she had seen the truth behind the legends, the Deathworlders were not monsters. They were guardians made by pain, tempered by loss, and bound by promise. One evening, as the Erebus orbited the repaired moonbase, Lyra stood beside Rowan watching the Earth rise beyond the horizon. The planet looked peaceful again, green and blue, but its glow carried the memory of what it had unleashed. "Do you think it's really gone?" she asked quietly. Rowan didn't answer immediately. He stared into the endless dark, the same place where the shadow had fled. "No," he said finally, "nothing that old ever truly dies. It just waits," she nodded. "Then so will we." The fleet lights flickered one by one as ships aligned in orbit. Their hulls reflected the sunlight in silver streaks that stretched across the black. From above it looked like a crown of stars surrounding the Earth, the symbol of a species reborn and far beyond in the edges of the void. Where light could no longer reach, something moved faintly, a single pulse of darkness, smaller than before but alive. It drifted silently, watching the blue planet from afar. Then, as if speaking to itself, it whispered, "They shine brighter now, but the brighter the flame, the longer the shadow it casts." Back on the Erebus, Admiral Rowan gave his final order of the cycle. "All ships prepare for patrol routes beyond Sol." Humanity doesn't hide anymore. The crew stood tall, voices steady. "Yes, Admiral." Engines ignited, thrusters flared, and the great Terran armada began to move once again. Their banners carried not the mark of conquest, but the symbol of endurance. The galaxy watched in silence as the Deathworlders returned to the stars, not as monsters, not as myths, but as the guardians of dawn. And so ended the war that should never have begun. And so began the legend that would never be forgotten, because when the galaxy called for help, humanity answered, and the universe was never the same again.